Good evening, comrades. My name is Michael Kramer. From 1972 to 1975, I was a member of the Israeli Defense Forces. An intense period in my life, and 2 years later, 2.5 years later, I became a comrade in Workers' World Party, and want to thank the party for physically introducing me to the Palestinian community, and was very quickly able to work in Palestine solidarity work. Unfortunately, once again, I have to give one of these talks about Gaza, the resistance in Gaza, and that is our comrade from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, one of the main leaders of the organization, Khalida Jarrar, who is in a Zionist jail. And she's not even charged with anything. She's under what's called administrative detention. In other words, they're so fearful of her organizing abilities that they've just jailed her, and she continues to organize in prison. We won't forget her, and I know the paper has had articles in the past on her struggles. So, Gaza. Developments last weekend, they began on Sunday. While the Prime Minister of Israel was in Europe taking part in these ceremonies marking the end of World War I, there was something like over 80 leaders of countries who were in France. He was there. And while he was there, somewhat bizarre, but an Israeli military operation took place. An Israeli highly trained military unit crossed the border into Gaza, and it's a little unclear what they were doing, but they were ambushed by the resistance. And we applaud that. The Israelis had to extricate their people. A high-ranking officer, a colonel, was killed. Another officer was wounded. And they were extricated by a massive show of force from the air, bombing both sides of the road, helicopters landing. That wasn't the plan at all. That wasn't supposed to happen. Once again, the Israelis underestimated the Palestinian resistance, as they've done over the years. Netanyahu was forced to leave this conclave of so-called world leaders and return to Israel. And very soon after, a crisis took place in the Israeli government. During the ambush of the Israelis, 7 Palestinian fighters were killed, and we mourn them. And I've noticed in like newspapers, whenever like one Israeli is killed in this conflict, there's like a whole story about, you know, who they are, who they were, where they live, where they worked, and everything. But the way Palestinians are portrayed, they're like invisible. They don't even have a name. So I will just take a minute or so to mention the names of these freedom fighters who were killed. There was Mohammed Majed Musa Al-Kara, 23, Ala al-Din Muhammad Kuwaidar, 22, Mustafa Hussein Muhammad Abu Odeh, 21, Muhammad Atala Muzba, 25, Ala Nasrallah Fusefes, 24, Amer Naji Musalam Abu Qater, 21, and a high-ranking military member of Hamas, Nur al-Din Muhammad Salama Baraka, 37. And we won't forget them. They did what they had to do, and they defended Palestine. Now, Monday, 3 more Palestinian freedom fighters were killed as the Israelis launched air attacks, I think over 200 air attacks, and the Palestinians responded with hundreds of missiles flying out of Gaza into occupied Palestine. To be honest, the damage was not that great materially, but the damage to the settlers in Palestine was indescribable. It was a psychological victory for the resistance, that day, Monday, November 12th, I mentioned 3 Palestinian additional freedom fighters were killed in an Israeli airstrike. 2 of them from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and we have a picture of one of our comrades, Mohammed Zudi Odeh, who was 22. Another one of our comrades was Mohammed Zakaria al-Tatari, who was 27, and he had fled from the Yarmouk refugee camp in Syria during the civil war in Syria, went to Gaza, and he was killed this past Monday. On Tuesday, a ceasefire was announced. It appears to have been brokered by the Egyptians, but we don't know all the information, who met with who. But there was a ceasefire. And, well, in Palestine, there's never a 100% ceasefire. But in terms of missiles being fired and airstrikes, there was a ceasefire. And the Palestinian people in Gaza considered it a victory. They held mass rallies throughout Gaza. And that's a brave thing to do because the Zionists have a history of attacking mass rallies. And you go to a mass rally with 30,000, 40,000 people in an open area, you can't run fast, especially if there's an airstrike and planes are flying 400 or 500 miles an hour. But they did have mass rallies, including a mass rally in front of the house of the fallen leader I mentioned before, Hamas leader. They had mass rallies in Gaza City. One of the things the Israelis did was they targeted high-rise buildings as they had a few years ago. One of the buildings they targeted was a building that housed Al-Aqsa TV station. I think it was an 8-story building. They have sophisticated ordnance. They know how to hit the building, and the building just pancakes. What they do is they make telephone calls. They have everybody's number in Palestine. They call people up. They do robocalls. Get out of the building. We're going to hit it in 5 minutes. So, and that's what happened. But right after the ceasefire, there was a big rally in front of the building. There was also a large rally in the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza, and a rally in Rafah in southern Gaza. But the resistance was incredible. I had a chance to read some of the kind of detailed things that happened. And the Palestinian resistance had to balance tactical considerations and strategic considerations. And as evidenced, there was a bus carrying about 50 Israeli soldiers. And the Palestinians had the bus in the crosshairs using a Russian-made missile called a Cornet. And they waited for all the soldiers to get off the bus. And as soon as all the soldiers were off the bus, they fired the missile, they videotaped it, the missile hit the bus, and the bus exploded. For whatever reason, they decided that was better than firing the missile before they got off the bus, which might not have allowed for a ceasefire. Perhaps they weren't prepared to revisit 2008 or revisit 2014. But there really is no ceasefire in Palestine. Yesterday, a fisher person was killed just 100 feet off the coast. His name, Nawaf al-Attar, 20 years old. The Israelis banned fishing for a few days while this was going on. He decided he was going to fish. I mean, 100 feet into the water is not really far if you go to the beach, 100 feet. But there he was, 100 feet from shore, and he was killed with a high-powered weapon. So this is, yeah, so this is the so-called ceasefire. This outbreak of heavy fighting that lasted only for a few days has resulted in 100 families being displaced. 7 killed, 26 wounded, and for the Zionists, psychological panic is the best way to explain it. Within Netanyahu's cabinet, there's disarray. The defense minister quit. The defense minister is a settler from Moldavia, a former security person at a nightclub. He was defense minister. He resigned, Lieberman. And just today, there was an incursion into Gaza, just along the border. These armed Israeli bulldozers, caterpillars, D9 caterpillars with armor all around them, crossed into Gaza and leveled agricultural land and kind of create a no-person zone. And this is what they continue to do, and this is why our work in the Palestinian Solidarity Movement is so important. What was also interesting, inside Israel, there were 2 demonstrations. One were Israeli settlers blocked roads near the border with Gaza, and they were against the truce. They see no hope, and there is no hope for them. It's too bad it has to be drawn out. They should just leave, but it's not that easy. They will be pushed out eventually. But there was also a demonstration and roadblock in Tel Aviv with a different agenda, and that was solidarity with the children of Gaza. So we see within the Zionist state there's tensions and there's political disarray. The cabinet, Netanyahu's cabinet, is fractured, and Israel is more isolated than ever, particularly in the recent period. A strong ally in the U.S., new ally in Brazil, a few other allies. Their ally in Saudi Arabia, that's a little shaky now. But I think it just means so much more that we almost intensify our work with BDS. I was thinking about BDS before. It's, what was that? Is it Gulliver? Where someone, large person, is tied up by Gulliver's Travels. And in a way, that's what BDS is, because boycott, divestment, sanctions. And it's a worldwide movement. And each BDS struggle in the big picture is relatively small. It could be encouraging a musician not to go to Israel and perform. It could be a boycott of wine grown in the Golan. many, many things, which really in the big picture are small, but they bite the Zionist entity. And this is what their biggest fear of, this growing BDS movement. So just to conclude, we salute the Palestinian resistance. We mourn our comrade, and free Khalida Jarrah. Thank you.